Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats, and delighted to be joined today by none other than Miss Carrie Alliston of Barben Insurance. So Carrie was an agent for years before moving onto the supplier side, and most notably with Hunters. But before I go into too much detail, Carrie, thanks for joining me. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about you and your journey in property so far?
Yeah, sure. So Carrie, I work at Barben. Brand names HomeLet and Let Alliance that I work
Those
for.
tiny little businesses that just do a couple of references here and there.
Just a few, yeah.
How many references do you guys do roughly?
Well, it depends on who you ask, I suppose.
But let's go with marketing.
About 1 million.
I mean,
Mad.
not bad, is it?
All right, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's good. So I've been there since January of this year, but before that I was at Hunters for, I think it was 21 years.
Wow.
Yes.
So 21 years. When did... Because it's Kevin.
When I first started, it was run by Kevin and actually his brother Keith.
And that must have been quite a young business then, right?
Yes.
So it's not...
Yeah, it was only a few years old when I first started. I started in the Leeds office. It had a city centre office right in Leeds, and I just moved to Leeds.
Was that before? Did franchising come later?
That came later.
So that's when it was a self-contained business.
Yeah. So I just moved to Leeds because I wanted something a bit more exciting out of life.
From where? Where did you move from?
Well, I had lived in Hampshire, but before I was brought up in Cornwall on a farm.
As you do.
Shocking. I moved.
I don't think I knew that.
Didn't you?
I don't think I knew that.
Oh my God, we can need another podcast for that story.
Yeah. Carrie the farmer girl years.
Yeah, well, I wasn't a farmer, but we did live on a farm that had no mains electric. We had a generator.
I mean,
of course we did.
It's Cornwall countryside. There are no rules.
Yeah, so hence I moved to Leeds eventually. Just as Leeds was...
Do you just stand in the living room with a light switch for a day just going, ooh?
Well, no, because you actually, one of the most tragic things, as a teenage girl, you couldn't have the hairdryer on and the TV at the same time.
The generator couldn't handle it.
It was not having it.
Wow.
No, yeah, so we had quite a bit of land as well. But anyway, like I say, that's a different podcast.
And people talk about our generation growing up slightly differently to the youth of today.
It was an experience.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of our house in Menorca, that when we first bought it was a derelict bakery, and it had no mains water. We had a well in our kitchen. So there was a well in our kitchen, and literally whatever you had to do, brush your teeth, go to the loo, whatever, you went and got a bucket out the well.
All right.
And and in the summer, like sometimes we were out there in the summer, our well would run dry, and we'd have to get like a drinkable water truck to put up outside and refill our well up. So
we did have a spring that was up in a farmer's
it
field.
sounds weird saying all this stuff. We're now in an environment where we have phones that could launch a fucking spacecraft, and it's a bit weird having these stories, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite a lot's changed in our lifetime.
Just a little bit. Well, actually, my first ever job, I suppose, was in property in Cornwall, in a town called Launceston, where I went to school, and it was work experience. And I did my first work experience at Weber's, and it was back in the day where
that must have been a fairly young business then, or no?
Yeah,
Weber's Weber's one of the early ones, because they're still going.
They
right?
are, yeah, I know. Yeah, it was a long time ago, so my memory is quite hazy.
Yeah.
But I do remember it was the days where you had to print the photos out, stick them onto the details, and then people would come in on a Saturday,
and
because
ask
Saturday
for an
was the
availables
busiest
list.
day, wasn't it? And they wanted
your availables list all printed out.
Yeah, so I did my first ever property job was in there. So then I eventually moved to Leeds, just as it was becoming what it is now. It was always behind Manchester as a city, but just as I moved to Leeds, it was really all about the city living. So I think I had started at Hunters at a really good time.
Yeah.
Because it was really vibrant. All the new apartment blocks were being built. They were really making it into the city that it is now, rather than what people...
So when was this? Kind of early 2000s?
2003 I moved there. So yeah, when I first moved there, it was very much, because I'm from the south, obviously, so my dad thought it was hilarious that everyone in Leeds up north, wore a flat cap, had a whippet, and an outside toilet. But it wasn't that. It was getting to be so different.
Yeah.
And so when I first started in the lettings office there, it was brilliant. It was just buzzing. Yeah, it was fantastic. And so I started in there in 2003 as a negotiator. Then you get made into a valuer, don't you? And then I did
because in those days you didn't have to learn a lot, right? You were like, gas safety.
Yeah, but I was that person. I've always been that person that when I went...
Because deposit laws weren't even in then. That was 2007. So, yeah.
When I first went in, they had a CRM. They used...
Swanky.
Oh, no. They used CFP Winman.
Woo!
But they didn't use...
Some agents still do today.
They do.
So I did not mean to laugh. If you're an agent still using it, I don't be offended. But there are more modern products out there.
But they still used a paper diary when I first started. And I said, this system's got an actual diary. They were like, ooh. Anyway, we went on to the diary pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And
nice.
So then... Yeah, so I was a negotiator, and you're right. You didn't have the rules and all of that. It was nowhere near like it's now, obviously.
Well, you could take any deposit you wanted.
Yep.
No cap on holding deposits. Referencing fees, admin fees, all that stuff. All those changes that have come in.
And actually, it did. I think I started in 2003, and then I think that was the start for me, anyway. How I see it is the start of how it all began to change, because even externally and internally, people used to bring in cash all the time.
Well, it's a similar time to when I started. I started 2002, like late 2002, and I did 18 months, and then we started base in 2004. So, yeah, and similar thing, like lettings in London, I think has always been a bit buzzy because it's London, but obviously we had at the time that insane sales market in London at that moment where people would just take my money.
Have my money.
Yeah. It rings a lot of bells, but it's fascinating looking back now at the industry we walked into, which there was so little to learn to be a good neg. It was, here's your applicant box. This is how you register an applicant. This is how you hit the phones.
Yeah. 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 And that's exactly, I remember my first day, and they said, "Oh, can you go and do this viewing?" And I hadn't actually worked in the lettings before, on a front desk.
I'm pretty sure that happened to me as well the first day. Just go and show this flat.
Do you know? Can you go and do this viewing? I said, "Yeah, of course." And I'm thinking, I've just moved to Leeds. I'm not a clue where anything is. But I was like, "Yeah, it's fine." Keys? Well, what do I do? But it was brilliant, and it was good, really good fun. But luckily, I think for me and for the team there in the office, I've always been that person that's quite into that detail.
Yeah.
So it worked well. So when the more rules came in, I didn't push back on them. I quite liked them. I don't mind the rules. It's all quite
good, and the vast majority of them have very good reasoning behind them, right? Like the deposit laws when they came in. Jesus Christ, that was the Wild West. We all knew landlords and agents who were like, "Oh well, end of a tenancy, I'll be keeping that deposit then. Oh, you need a reason? Fag burn on the sofa."
Yeah.
And it was, and that came in, and equally, I know for a lot of agents it was a really hairy time, but the tenant fee ban again, I really feel like that was a really important shift in our industry because tenants were being rinsed just so that landlords could really underpay for the service they were getting. All the while, tenants really, most of the time, getting shortchanged in service.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think a lot of so many people hate change. Yeah. But I think within our industry, we're getting used to it now, and I think we do.
There's been a hell of a lot of it. The last what we're saying 18 years, but really the last decade, it's been pretty non-stop, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. I think if you've got guidelines and rules, you know where you work what you're working within, and that's good for everyone. Us as an agent, the landlord and the tenant. And if you're dealing with a sticky issue, if you've got the rules, the tenancy agreement to focus on and to refer back to, everyone knows where they stand, rather than it being the Wild West where it's just opinion this or, well, it's that or it's the, I think I quite liked it. Like you mentioned Tenant Fees Act. I was at Hunters then, working as a lettings director, I think, at that point. And as much as everyone thought I was having a nervous breakdown, secretly I was loving it.
Yeah.
Absolutely thrived on how am I going to help implement this into the Hunters network to make sure that we are following the rules, nobody gets into trouble, and that the branches don't lose
commercially viable.
Thousands of pounds of money. So when I used to work in the Hunters office in York, I used to be, as it was leading up to the implementation day, I mean, I would be stomping around having a breakdown. But like I say, secretly inside, I was like, oh, I love this. It's exciting.
It's all kind of, like you said, it's like, you know it's happening for a reason. It's change that needs to happen. Businesses often find a way, and particularly like it's one of the reasons I went into property and I went into housing, is that it's relatively recession proof in that, yes, there are highs and lows, but having a home isn't going to go out of fashion.
Yeah.
You know, people aren't going to suddenly wake up tomorrow and be like, this whole home thing.
So overrated.
You know, the open air's the place for me. So I kind of always say the stance that it finds its way. And with all this stuff, I think we go through this same cycle every time. Something gets announced and there's a knee-jerk reaction from swathes or so going, oh my God, it's the end of letting agents and PRS and landlords are going to leave. And then, you know, the pennies start to kind of drop a little bit. And it's like, actually nothing's really fundamentally changed. And it does generally nudge our industry into a better direction, a fairer direction. I think, I think the Renters' Rights Act is no different to that. I think, when we first had it announced by the Tories in the last government, the Renters' Reform Bill, and then all throughout that, and then they're passing it delightfully onto Labour, and the last year or so of getting to where we are now, I think, again, we had that same thing. The moment it was announced, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of renting. But once you see past the hysteria and you actually start looking at it from real world circumstances, like I think periodic tenancies, that was the one that everyone lost their fucking minds about when it was first announced. Right? Everyone was like, oh my God, tenants are going to move every 3 months. It was like, are you fucking mad? Like, do you know how stressful it is to move house? And expensive. Yeah. And, you've got to find that deposit again. You negotiate your deposit out. You choose your housemates, switch bills, everything else. You're like, you think tenants are just going to bounce every 3 months just because they can? It's like, calm down.
Yeah. No.
And I think the reality of what comes out of that is I think there's quite a lot of agents who know full well they don't do a good job looking after their tenants. And I think a lot of that fear came out of them. A lot of agents get away, and not just agents, landlords as well, get away with giving tenants a really poor rental experience. And I'm not even talking about the rogues and the criminals. I'm just talking about the ones who are just a bit shit. And they put people into a pretty tired, dilapidated property. And unless the ceiling is literally falling down or an entire wall is mould, they just kind of ignore the tenant because you're in a contract. What are you going to do? I think a lot of that fear was a lot of those agents, whether it's their own operation or the landlords they represent, realising that that's not going to cut it anymore. They're not going to have these tenants tied into 1, 2, 3 year contracts anymore. Tenants are going to have that freedom to be like, do you know what? I don't have to put up with this shit. Yeah. And I think, generally that's good for the sector. Are there things to be concerned about? Absolutely. I mean, our thought very much specifically about that bit was that you do have incidents. Like we've got an ex-council flat in the Boundary Estate, the beautiful Boundary Estate just off Shoreditch High Street. We look off this stunning top floor, 1-bed flat in there, sits just under the roof. Listed estate, operated by Tower Hamlets Council. We got a roof leak in there. it took us 2 years to get Tower Hamlets to fix it. And, that got increasingly worse. Now, for a while, we kind of carried the tenants along and kind of got them to accommodate what was going on as much as we could. And I think initially we quite quickly moved to like a 10 or 20% rent reduction because it was quite a serious water ingress. But then we got confronted with the situation where they were like, look, you're just going to have to let us go. Yeah. And in the end, we managed all of it. But I think those are the circumstances where as a landlord, leaseholder, and managing agent, where you've got a third party entity, a freeholder, a block management company, that kind of holds the keys to the solution. Yeah. I think those are the scenarios for me as a letting agent, property manager, you need to be safeguarding your clients from. So, that has led very much to us talking to our clients about what insurances do you have in place. Everything, really, most of the Renters' Rights Act, the primary concerns we've had for landlords ultimately comes back to insurance. Yep. We've said like with indefinite tenancies, and certain framings, rent warranties, and I've always thought they're incredible value for money, but now I think that value is insane, particularly in London where it counts for like 1% of rent.
Yeah, I think when in the past, I think people have looked at things like rent protection as a luxury item rather than a necessity. And I think you're right. I think as we come into the renters' rights, I think a lot of people are concerned in the media, landlords, agents. It was an element of the unknown because the headlines have been a bit woolly. There's been not a lot of detail behind it.
Well, it's also the time to resolve, right? That's the biggest thing that we're concerned about. I think one of the biggest things to come out of this is our joint concern of what this is going to do to our underfunded, struggling court system as it is. Yes. I think that was probably the biggest legitimate fear of removing Section 21s, was not so much the fact that Section 21s have gone, because as we both know, as pretty much every decent, half sensible landlord and letting agent in the country knows, no one serves a Section 21 on a whim. Nope. No one serves it for no reason. Yep. It's served as an alternative to something else. And actually the Renters' Rights Act is framed very much that, slightly different, but those cases are all still there. But, you've always got that like risk, ultimately it's a business venture, right? So it's just about understanding your kind of risk profile. Yeah. And if you're a landlord without mortgages, great, your risk is significantly lower, because even if you find yourself with a tenant not paying, at least you're not having to pay a bank. Yep. But yeah, you've got to look at that. And again, I think this is all about the ongoing professionalisation of the PRS as a whole. And we talk about a lot of this stuff. We're requiring landlords and, the increasing need for them to use a quality lettings and management company because there is so much involved in it, but also because they need to take a business approach. Like we would run any business and you look at what your risks are and how great those risks are and whether you can minimize or even eliminate those. Now, I would say in pretty much any business, if you could pay 1% of your turnover to eliminate your biggest risk relating to your income, I'd say most businesses in any sector would bite your freaking arm off.
No, absolutely. Yeah, going back to, we've at HomeLet and Let Alliance, we obviously look at stats and stuff like that. And last week I was doing a landlord event, and so I got prepped for it. Yeah. Find out what the average possession time is in two areas in Birmingham, and it was 7 to 8 months.
Which is so. When you're in a stress situation, that's bad, but we know that's going to get worse, right?
The landlord has already had 2 months where there's no rent been paid. Oh. So you look at the average rent, I think it's about 1,300 a month at the moment.
It's gone up a lot.
Yeah. So you look at all of that. You look at that, all that potential lost income, and the stress of not for landlords, you know, as
if
an
you've got a
agent,
mortgage to pay,
yeah.
I mean, that is...
But you know what it's like. You'll speak to landlords that are in that position and they're beyond, they don't know what to do because, if they haven't got rent protection, you know, they're going to have to pay for something.
And they still
extra.
have to be a landlord. They still have to, if the boiler breaks, they still have to fix the boiler.
Yeah.
If the washing machine breaks, they still have to fix the washing machine. They don't get to go, you're not paying your rent, so I ain't doing anything till your rent arrears are sorted. You can't legally do that.
Yeah, but you as an agent, you should have to remind them of that as well. That's the first thing they'll think. They'll assume, well, there's no
rent. You know, don't pay your rent, don't get things fixed.
Yeah.
Which is kind of logical, but...
Yeah. I think that's what being a good valuer was. That's what I learned when I was a valuer, because when I was at Hunters, I did all those jobs and learned a lot along the way to get to where I am now, because you know what it's like. We've all ballsed up a valuation, we've all ballsed up a call to get a price reduction or trying to get something fixed. And I remember doing a valuation once with a couple, and they just bought a new apartment. They just put all the furniture in. It was gorgeous, and there was a second property that they had, and they were so proud of it. So, you know, sell to the needs, you know, do all of that. And their other property, they had rent arrears on. And so I just knew that that's what I had to focus on, protecting that. Yeah. And that's what I think a big part of the job of being an agent is actually listening to what the customer actually wants from you, rather than, you know, that robotic pitch.
Yeah.
It has to be about that. And I think coming back to the Renters' Rights Act, I think that we have to look at it. Me as now a supplier, although I've still got agent brain, I still think I'm an agent.
But that's why they recruited you. They wanted your agent brain.
Yeah. I think we have to think, right, what is it that we can do for them, and how can we make the Renters' Rights Act actually work for everybody? Yeah. Because it's here now, so let's just get on with it.
I think the Renters' Rights Act is one of the greatest things to happen for letting agents, and particularly property management, for England and Wales PRS that's ever happened. Yes, it doesn't feel like that right now because we're all freaking out about how to implement all of this stuff, and we think we know how things are going to work, but let's you know, until it happens, let's see what happens. But look, the more things you have to do, the more strict something is. I mean, you know, the fact that our industry is not a profession, the fact that we now have, particularly on the letting side, in fact, more than a state agency, and it's always a state agency that gets kind of the high profile side of our industry. But I think with lettings, you know, it's really funny always when we talk to, you know, you often find our industry people are either sales or lettings, right? I always find it interesting you talk to sales, because I'm like, they're like, why do you do sales? I'm like, oh, that conveyancing stuff, I hate all that stuff, being like out of control and juggling all these parties. And I'm like, why do you do sales? Oh my God, lettings, having to know all that compliance and all those rules and stuff. Like, no, solicitors have to know all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, but we're in control of it. Mm-hmm. Right? We know what has to be done, so as long as we deliver it, we're good. What I don't like about sales is, it's someone else doing all that stuff that you can't control. But genuinely, for, you know, what is it, roughly 36% of England and Wales PRS stock is managed by an agent out of 4.3 million homes. We have 1 in 3. Yeah. Like, that's poor. Yeah. You know, we have roughly a half of the stock. So we've got, you know, roughly 2 million plus homes which are being let and managed by the landlords. And as you and I both know, with the greatest respect to landlords, most of them are massively naive and uneducated as to the litany of responsibilities and duties and compliance and regulation that they need to follow.
Well, this year we have been working with Eric Walker. Lovely Eric.
Never heard of him, has he?
No, he's quite, I think he does a bit of this, a bit of that.
Yeah, he knocks around a little bit.
Eric's been doing a lot of landlord events for Martin & Co. And we've been...
I can't imagine why, because he's such an unlikable character and so unknowledgeable. God, he's
We've been attending with him from a perspective of, like you say, protecting the risk. And so we've been in front of thousands of landlords, most of which are managed by the agent, but a lot where the let-only landlords have been invited as well. And it's been fascinating and pretty amazing.
I bet almost every single one you've had a landlord ask a really basic question about deposit protection.
There's been a lot of basic questions, which, you can have a wry smile, but please ask. Absolutely
do ask. And look, what I would say is, and I'm not going to name the groups, but I'm sure you're the same. I'm a member of Facebook and WhatsApp groups with agents in, and I see some of the questions agents float within a safe community, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like, we're all a happy community. But sometimes I see some of the questions in there, and I'm like, you've been running an agency for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It is.
Have you seen the landlord groups?
Do you know what? I've joined quite a few landlord groups, and I often find myself leaving because I just find it depressing, bewildering. I find a lot of the language in there, and obviously we're not talking about, anything really overtly sweary or nasty, but I find the general language around tenants really quite shocking.
Yeah.
And look, that's not unique to landlords. I think that's still a big problem in our industry, and it was what drove Anne and I to start Base back in 2004. Anne had been in the industry much longer than me. Like I said, I'd only been an agent for about 18 months. But Anne had been in the industry, I can't remember if it's either 5 or 7 years, but she worked for some, she'd been at Corals, she'd been at, I think, Man Countrywide, she'd done like a few, she'd been headhunted a couple of times. I'm pretty sure it's 7 years she'd been in. But the one thing we absolutely agreed on, we felt that landlords were getting an all right service, but one thing we absolutely agreed on was that tenants were treated appallingly in general. And, that was not just because those were pre-Tenant Fee Act times. So not only did we feel like tenants were getting rinsed, the agency we worked for, I remember their contract terms, the admin fee for a tenancy was 2 weeks rent plus VAT at the start and end of every tenancy. So you do a 1 year contract
for the checkout fee.
And you'd get to the end of the tenancy and the tenant would go, cool, I want to renew. And we'd be like, cool, these are the terms, but you've got your end of tenancy and your new tenancy fee. And then they'd go, oh shit, okay, didn't realise I'd have to pay all of that. I'm going to leave. Cool. So you've still got your end of tenancy fee, and now we've got your checkout and end of tenancy admin fees. And it was, and look, that didn't sit right with us at all. But the main thing that drove us is, if you back then, and this has definitely got better, but I would still argue that this is still way too common. If you go and sit in any letting agent's office, if you got the opportunity to be a fly on a wall, and they kind of, they don't know that they're being watched. If you listen to the common language within a letting agent's office and the way tenants are often referenced. And again, we're not talking about really nasty words here. We're just talking about a general attitude. And all too often there is this undertone of oh God, guess what a tenant's asked now? Oh, God forbid they ask for something after paying you 20 grand a year. Okay, not you, but paying a landlord 20 grand a year. How unreasonable that they want a fridge that works, or heating that when they turn it on actually heats up the fucking house. That was kind of the driver for us, was we felt that, landlords could get a lot more, and if they did, you should never really lose a landlord. And we've paid testament to that. Most of our clients have been with us since day dot when they joined us. But also with tenants, look after them, and it's better for everyone, Surely if they feel well cared for, well respected and well supported, fundamentally they're going to like that, particularly if that's not been their typical renting experience to date. So they're going to want to stay in that home longer. They're going to want to look after it. They're going to want to pay their rent on time and keep you and the landlord happy. And
I think we've got to remember, it's easy sometimes to think about, it's a process, but actually what we're dealing with is someone's home, and if we can all try and remember that a bit more, I think then it's much better for everybody, because it is a home. It's not just a house, and I think it all that domino effect will come from that. I think if we
I think it's a really, really relevant point, because again, coming back to the Renters' Rights Act, you and I have been around a lot of tables, TLIC and also the Super Lettings Advisory Board, but also in our own spheres, our businesses and our contacts, and we've debated the myriad of proposals that we've seen over the last couple of years and the possible impacts. But I think what I've always found a little bit, again, disappointing is this default attitude, and it's not just agents, it is landlords, it's also our media. This default preface that tenants are somehow out to pull one over you, to win one over. I mean, it's like the rent tribunal thing. This attitude that because of the reframing of the rent tribunal, there's this kind of expectation that almost every tenant is just going to dispute the rent increases because they can, and they can tie it up for 6 to 12 months, and there's no impact. And it's like, but most tenants can't be asked to do that. Like you said, they want a home, but also, like, not only is it really important that you feel it's home, but also for most of us, you just want to pay your rent and live in a home that doesn't fall down around your ears, and when something breaks, it gets fixed in a timely fashion. And other than that, generally, you just want to be left the fuck alone. Because it's your house. We've all got so much going on in our lives with work and kids and family and whatever else we're trying to do in our lives. How often do you really want the kind of nuts and bolts of your home to impact your day-to-day life? And the reality is, for most people, not at all. They just want to pay their rent and be well looked after, and otherwise just be left alone to get on with their lives. And I think that's the slightly disappointing thing with a lot of and we've seen it in the media through all of our media channels. There's been quite a lot of like clickbaity stuff about, oh my God, tenants are going to do this. And it's like, they're really not.
Because one of the things that I talk about, if I'm at one of these landlord events, or I'm talking to people within HomeLet and Let Alliance, when we're looking at all aspects of it, even though we're not an agent, obviously we work for agents, so we've got to do everything as well for the agents to make it work for you. And we've only got to look at Scotland. So the Scottish law. I mean,
Eric's been saying this for years.
Exactly, and Eric and I have a lot of conversations about this, and the way that they changed the law in Wales as well. In Scotland, we're going to be doing a lot of what they've already done.
If you want to see what the PRS looks like in 2, 3, 5 years, take a look at Scotland.
At that, and it's fine. And we talk to a lot of Scottish agents about referencing, about rent protection, about other insurances, and really it's no different, to what's going to happen here. And I think Eric has said before that, of course, rents went up a lot at the beginning, but it's settled down.
Well, when they brought in rent controls, which is the big thing everyone's scared of. But if you actually research rent controls, not just Scotland, but in most countries, New York, Germany, Spain, in a lot of these countries, it's driven, at least initially, a faster rent increase than ever on record, because the market kind of goes and does a reset, whereas they've let people be paying 3, 4, 5-year-old rates. They've suddenly gone, bring it right back up to modern rate. And it doesn't become this huge consumer win that, it's another one of these kind of tagline policies that when you say what it's called, it sounds like it's going to be the best win ever for tenants. But actually, when you drill down into the minutiae and how it is structured, more often than not so great.
I think the way we have to all look at it is whether from either side of the fence is that it's happening, and my attitude is very much right. Okay, let's just get on with it and do it well, make the best of it, make it work, because there's no point sitting there going, oh, it's terrible. Oh dear. There's just no point in doing that, is there?
No, and I think there's nothing wrong with having those moments. I think what a lot of agents forget is that that is not a conversation to have on your social media pages. That is not a conversation to have in your company blog. That is a conversation to have in a room like this, in an office with your team behind closed doors, where, you know, if you want to panic about the future of the industry and potentially your business, great, you do that behind closed doors. But I think if we want to look at one of the driving factors of why there are a lot of twitchy landlords at the moment, you know, you and I were chatting before we put the camera on, and I was telling you how, you know, the first month of this year, we had close to just under 15% of our landlords, which represented about 22% of our stock, tell us at the start of the year that they had an intent to sell this year. And that wasn't primarily driven or solely driven by the Renters' Rights Act, but that was a myriad of factors: age, time of property, a stagnation of capital appreciation in London, tax changes, inheritance planning, you know, all this sort of stuff. But you know, throughout this year and throughout the kind of renters reform into Renters' Rights Act, there's been a lot of agents who've gone out on their social media, on comments on industry media articles, bemoaning the death of the PRS. This is the end of it. It's completely unviable. All landlords are going to leave. It's not going to work. And then 6 months after they've been trotting this stuff out almost every few days, they then start querying or going, see, I told you, all our landlords are leaving. Do you want to know why they're really leaving? Because you've just spent 6 months convincing them that the market's screwed and it's going to come to an end. And I think what some agents forget is, like, you know, we're the marshal in the storm. We're the ones who are meant to take a beat, have a think, have a bit of a natter and go, oh, actually, okay, there's things we need to be aware of. There's things we need to consider. And there are definitely risks and you know, potential negative impacts that we need to be aware of and factor into our business. But are suddenly 4.5 million homes and 10 million tenants going to suddenly decide they no longer want to rent a property? No. And because they can't.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nowhere for them to go. So there's always going to be a PRS. You know, I know some people bemoan the Greens pledge a few weeks ago about getting rid of the PRS. I mean, like, look, don't panic, guys. It's a 10, 15, 20-year plan that they've got. And again, there are underpinnings to that, the provision of social housing and all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think agents often forget that filter of, you know, we can give candor, we can give it, you know, we absolutely should be sharing our candor and our insights and giving context to things that get reported in the news and shared on social media and reported in our industry press. But our job is not to panic. Yeah. Like, how is a landlord genuinely meant to trust you as an agent in your ability, not just now, but in the future? And that's what we all want, right? We all want clients that we sign and we work with for the foreseeable future. Like, we want to never lose a client unless they sell that property, you know, unless they cease to become a landlord. I don't ever want a landlord to have a legitimate want or need to leave base. And I think that's what most agents should aspire to. So with that in mind, it doesn't matter what service you're looking for, but if someone is going to look after you for the rest of your life and a particular asset, are you gonna stick with the one that every time there's a legislative change and a change to interest rates or a change to law throws their hands up in the air and goes, oh my God, it's all gonna end? Or the one who goes, oh, that's a bit tricky, but actually, do you know what? This will be like that, that'll be like that, and actually it's only this we need to, you know, talk about. I mean, again, when we talked about the loss of Section 21s, I mean, that was the thing Conservatives hung their hat on. That got royal assent back in 2019. That went well. You know, and everyone bemoaned this, oh my God, we're going to be stuck with people, and what are we going to do? But then when you look at the data, And it was pretty readily accessible data. I mean, the House of England report shows that 85% of all tenancies are ended by the tenant.
Yep, absolutely.
So hold on, we're absolutely losing our crap over what is instantly 15% of the market. And then you start drilling down into that and you go, okay, well, we're changing the mechanics of it, but you can still have right to occupy. So that's another 3 or 4%. You've still got right to sell. That's another 3 or 4%. So suddenly your 15% becomes 7%. You've still got legitimate rent arrears, breach of contract. Yes, again, the process becomes longer. It's probably another 4%. So, we're getting down to like 2 or 3% of the market now. And we took that stance quite early on in this discussion. And what was really interesting with our landlords, where they were like, oh, that actually completely turned that on its head, because we would have landlords read, like, I don't know, an article in the Times or the Telegraph or whatever and be like, oh my God, do I need to panic? And it would be like, well, no, because this is the data behind it, this is the reality. And they come back going, oh, why is it even in the paper then? I was like, because it made you click on it.
Because it made you look at it.
You read it, didn't you? You shared it. I'm like, the journalist has done their job. I'm like, hopefully I've just done my job and told you that nothing to be afraid of.
I think that's where it can cause a problem. It's brilliant that nowadays, as an agent, to find some information out is loads of places to go. Like back in the day, you had to ring up a legal helpline to try and find the answer to something you didn't know. But now it's more readily available. But then on the flip side of that, there's a lot of
you got to be careful
crap out there as well, or headline grabbing, or people just putting stuff on that's ridiculous.
Nonsense, and also AI.
Yes.
AI is great, but you've got to rein that bugger in. You've got to have that knowledge. You've got to cross-check.
Yeah. So I think it's a double-edged sword with the fact that it's easily accessible, but when you're looking at that, you are going to see the headline-grabbing, Daily Mail style things that are there to scare people. Yeah.
Clickbait. And again, you've probably heard that. I've over the years, I've been in situations several times with journalists, either at events or just meeting them and having a chat. And it's that thing of, I remember years ago, Base was really young. I think we were only like 2 or 3 years old. And I went to some like local Shoreditch business networking thing on Curtain Road. And I met, I'm pretty sure it was the property journalist for the Telegraph or something at the time. And obviously we were very bumpy then because we started 2004. I think that was like 2007. So like a year before the global financial crisis. Everything was a little bit, everyone was kind of like, God, this market is nuts, can it? And I remembered like catching him and being like, what is it with you lot writing boom or bust? I'm like, it's either the best times ever or we're all doomed. And I was like, why is there never anything like actually contextual and middle of the road? And he just went, it's very simple, Kristjan, because it won't get bloody printed. He's like, if I don't get printed, I don't get paid. He's like, so my job is to write an article that my editor goes, absolutely people are going to want to read that. And to get my article printed and online, it was like, that is my job as a journalist. Like, as long as there is some sort of fact or substance to it, how I leverage that. And that was, I remember that being kind of eye-opening to me and really kind of setting my mind at that time, being slightly naive, maybe thinking that journalists were literally just reporting the news rather than doing a job, trying to, pay their own mortgage and rent and whatever else they've got to pay. So, but I think, journalist job is one thing. Again, same with our media industry channels, big support of those guys, and they put out some great stuff. But again, they are there to get eyeballs, to sell advertising space and everything else. And as agents, we have to be careful not to get caught up with the hiatus and the hyperbole and and we like I said, it's fine to do that in your office, in a closed space, within your business, within your circle of friends, within your network, whatever. Have those moments of, what do we do?
You're going to need them, aren't you? Yeah, you need a lot of steam.
You've got to have those. You've got to have them. We have them. It's why I enjoy so many of the different people I know and things that we do, because you always will have someone's new perspective. You'll hear someone's take on something. You'll be like, that is fucking genius. I'd never thought to look at it that way. And it's quite often the perspective you take on it, right? But too many agents lose sight of the fact that they are their landlord's weather vane. And so if they are out there preaching doom and gloom, don't be surprised if your landlords act like it's the end of the world, because you've just spent the last 6 months telling them it is. So look, something else I wanted to talk about. So your time at Hunters, what was your final big honcho title?
Lettings director.
Lettings director. And so one thing I really liked with Hunters is, there was several, at least on the letting side, which is kind of my wheelhouse, and I know we do see this more often, but what I did like with Hunters was they seemed to be quite ahead of the fray in terms of having strong, effective professional women running the business. I mean, obviously there was you, and there was Glynis as well, and I know I'm missing others. I'm sure there's a litany of other incredible women running the business, and probably the sales side better than I do. But they seem to be a business that, whether it was something they specifically set out for, they were just really good at spotting talent without any kind of filter on. How did you find, obviously this inequality within the space is reportedly within agency still steeper than in your average industry. How did you find being a woman coming up through Hunters, and what did you find kind of maybe underpinned or empowered or supported you guys different to other businesses? Because it's even to this day, it's still pretty rare.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. Obviously, I worked there for so long, so I was pretty, I am Hunters through and through, and that's what we used to say. So it's difficult to compare it to other businesses because I just worked at Hunters. I think that Hunters' ethos from day dot was always work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
But it was always about working hard to be what you wanted to be and for the company.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I worked hard.
So it was effort and results.
It was, yeah. I think it was
above all else.
Yeah, and I look back now and I think, God, was I really ambitious? I didn't see myself as ambitious back then, but maybe I was. In terms of, did I think I was going to be the MD? No, but did I think I wanted to work hard and get involved? I'm a pretty nosy person, so I always wanted to be involved in the next thing. Or
I'd phrase that as curious.
Okay, curious, yeah. Very, very curious.
Curious and inquisitive.
Yeah, so I just worked hard and got involved. I was interested as well. I was interested in different parts of the business, and just wanted to do that. And then when Glynis became my boss, it was, it was brilliant because...
Did that feel different?
It did. It did, because she is, she's a friend of mine now, so it's different.
She's an amazing woman.
Different now, but she would push you into, because she knows everything. She knows you better than you know yourself.
She wasn't a daft git to have got herself into that position in that time frame. I mean, that even in a business that was perhaps slightly more forward thinking, or
and she would push you, and she, in a really nice way, to push you out of your comfort zone. That was the biggest thing that she did, but with the freedom to make mistakes without too many repercussions.
Which I think is two really good qualities of any leader.
Yeah, and I remember when I first had to present in front of the very early days of some franchisees, and I had to present what we were doing in the Leeds office, and it was only about 20 people there, and it was the first time I'd ever presented, and I was a mess.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what I said, and I don't know whether it was any good, but she made me do it, and then so the next time I did it, she gave me a few pointers, and then I did it better, and that's, she did it in a nice way.
Yeah, that's really good.
But even though I said I didn't want to do it again, She still made me do it again.
Yeah, you don't ever want to see your staff drown.
No.
But yeah, absolutely. I think generally as a human, regardless of work, life, whatever, I think pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is a really, really healthy thing to do. Even if it just goes, oh no, I was right. I absolutely hate that. Or I'm absolutely no good at that. There's nothing wrong with being like, I think I'll be shit at this, but I'll have a go anyway. No. I do know myself pretty well. But no, I think with a lot of people now, I think that particularly is a really, really common thing I hear of, get out your comfort zone. It's something I've always like since I was young. I've phrased it slightly differently. I think it's really healthy to scare yourself, and you have to offset the risks and rewards. I'm not the kind of person that will like free dive off the side of a building because I'm just like, that's just fucking stupid.
It's unnecessary.
It's just like, come on, risk and reward.
Yeah.
But each their own at the end of the day. But no, I think generally, things that scare you, things like you said that are uncomfortable, it's very, very rare that you end up genuinely regretting it.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to, original question, Glynis coming back to what you said earlier, there was a lot of women in lettings. There just is. And they were always about bringing people up through the ranks as well. And so, sort of 5, 6, 10 years ago maybe, there was a lot of people in manager positions or senior manager positions that had started, as a negotiator or as a valuer. And I always really respected that. I respected the whole board, Keith, Kevin and Glynis, there was Martin, there was lots of them there from the old day, the ones that started it, and their work ethic, especially going back to 2007, when things were tough, how we saw them go back to the front desk and get on with it and get all the sacrifices they had to make at that point, and the work ethic that they had, that's what you respect, and then that's what you learn from, and then hopefully you become a better person within your career in the same way. So that was, there was all those little things that, that they did as a company that, that you look at and you think, well, actually, can't believe I'm here. Can't believe it's 21 years later. Then you get your old imposter syndrome kicks in.
Time passing
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no.
So, do you miss it? I mean, I know you love the new job and it's got new challenges, but do you miss the buzz of actually being an agent, boots on the ground, running the team? Or you like, actually, do you know what? Kind of feel like I did my time and.
I think I definitely did my time. Yes, I miss valuing. I miss meeting new landlords and explaining to them everything about being a landlord.
Anne loves that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And talking about how we can, do what we need to do for their investment and for their peace of mind, all of that. I think you can talk too much. I'm very good with that.
Sorry, who are you? You're guilty of that.
I'm being polite.
That's a first.
But yeah, you can go too scary with landlords at the beginning. You don't want to do that. But yes, I miss that, and I miss getting a deal.
I like Anne is our landlord queen. I will go out on some, but really like 95% she goes on. But I still love doing viewings. I still love that moment when you see someone fall in love with a home, and it's different to sales, but yeah, I love that moment of people walking in and it's like, and I love those moments where it's like, oh, these really funny comments we get like, oh, it looks exactly like it does online. Like every property shouldn't. It's like, and it's like, oh, it's actually bigger than it looks online. It's like, but no, I get this with friends, people I talk to in the industry, my wife, I still regularly go out on viewings, particularly at the end of the day. It's a really nice way to end the day. I get out the office, I go and show a few people a flat, and in the morning we tie up a deal, and everyone's happy. I've made, found someone a great home, a landlord's found a great tenant, and you know, off we crack on that stuff.
Yeah.
I still love that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, still people regularly go, "You still do that?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Of course.
I'm like, "That's what I fell in love with being as an agent."
Yeah.
You know, all the other stuff is fascinating and interesting, and you know, from a business perspective, there's lots to think about. But fundamentally, that's what I fell in love with, right? Going out and seeing properties. You know, it's not people's homes, they are investments. So it's, again, a slightly different kettle of fish. But I love property. I love discovering new neighbourhoods and new homes. And yeah, finding people a home and, you know, seeing that. I think it's not just the property. Also, I love meeting people on viewings and getting that, oh my God, you guys are so different to everyone else. They're like, you know, we spoke to Lauren on the phone or Tristan or, you know, oh, they were lovely and they asked some really nice questions. And, oh, you know, sometimes we get like, oh, actually, I rang up about this property, but, you know, they found out that I've got a car and a pet and it hasn't got either of those. So they suggested this one and here we are, you know, and then they turn up and like I said, you come and say, oh my God, it looks exactly like it does online. And it's like, yeah, and you're here on time and we've got straight in and, you know, if it's tenanted, they were expecting us or, you know, whoa, like whatever it is. And you're like, oh God, you've really not had a fun journey to this point, have you? But I love that little moment when you turn up and people, you know, walk in the house and that smile, they're like, oh, thank Christ, it is exactly what we thought it was.
Yeah.
You know, and you see them go walking off talking to each other and you know that offer's going to be in your inbox within the half hour. It's like, there you go, in nowhere. No pressure, guys, take your time. Don't worry. The offer's coming. But I still love that. And I think, you know, for as long as we have base, and I say that not because there's any plans to change that, but for as long as we have base, I don't think that's ever going to change. I think I'm always going to want to go out on viewings. I'm always going to, you know, when we have a property that sticks, I want to go and have a look at it. I might take one of the team with me, but I want to go and see it firsthand. I want to go and walk in there and be like, if I was looking to rent this place, why wouldn't I want to rent this place? And I told you, we've just done a massive refurb project for a client of ours who's been with us nearly 20 years, sub-penthouse. And again, that was the driving conversation of that. We've let him manage that flat for 20 years. It's one of those properties because it sits in quite a prime part of the market. We'd never have 30 inquiries about it, but whenever we put it to market, within a week it's gone, and always at a new record rent. And we put it to market this year and nothing. Like literally 2 weeks, I think we had one inquiry, which is unheard of for us. And they went up and they didn't offer. And I'm like, sorry, what now? You know, and I was just like, I need to go and see the flat for myself. And went upstairs and walked around the flat. And I was like, I know why this flat isn't letting, because it's no longer a prime flat.
Yeah.
You know, the landlord, because they haven't needed to, I think we've redecked it once. I think we replaced the carpets once. You know, we had a couple of insurance claim bits in there, but really that was the only investment that clients have made in the property in the 20 years we've let them managed it. They bought it 22, 23 years ago. So guess what? It's a bit dated. It's a bit tired. You know, and we then went through that journey, which again, I really like because I'm really passionate about property and how it looks and how it makes you feel. You know, we then went through that journey of, right, okay, what does this look like for this client? You know, and is this a light refresh? Is this a kind of mid, or is this a full shebang? And very quickly it was like, no, it's not a light one. It's a mid to a full shebang. But, you know, when we pitched it to the client, I was like, genuinely, how long you've had the property, what it's worth, where the market's going. And we know that they are, to put it politely, financially secure. So we were like, look, you could save like 20 grand, but our advice, spend the extra 20, do it properly, and maybe you can forget about it for another 20 years. But yeah, I love that side of things. And I'll, you know, as much as I love having conversations and talking about legislation and compliance and planning, marketing and all this sort of stuff, really it's about the properties and about the people, right? It's about...
I think I'm quite lucky in my new role, which isn't new anymore. I can't keep saying that.
I don't think you can keep it new when you're literally closing in on a year.
Yeah, but that's what HomeLet and Let Alliance, they did want me there as the agent. So I am spoiled in that respect because I can still be the agent in the room, in the meetings, when they're talking about different services they want to think of, different offerings, different the way that the platform is evolving. I'm always there butting in as the agent. And
the agents will love that because all too often, right, we are presented with products where someone will give us the name of or a preface to a new product or a feature, and it's like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And then they show you how they've iterated it, and you're like, what the hell is that? Like, you started off with such a good idea. Yeah. How did you end up here?
I think what I've learned dealing with the business analysts that do all the stuff at HomeLet is their knowledge. I mean, it is amazing, like shockingly amazing. They really know what they're doing, and they know.
Is this more like from a technical standpoint of
from our industry, about our industry? It is brilliant, and what they're trying to do for the customer, so for the agent, is create a great journey. What's quite nice for me is actually sometimes I can pull them back in a little bit and say, no, actually, agents just want it a little bit more simple than that. Actually, it doesn't always. Sometimes it's good. Doesn't always need to be all singing or dancing. Just needs to do the basics because it's
an easier message to convey. As agents, we have so much to tell our landlords, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So if one product takes 5 minutes to explain,
or even when you're doing something on the pre-tenancy platform, if you need to do 5 clicks, well, why can't we do it in 3 actually? So
no, absolutely. Again, it's something we've had with Depository. Less clicks is a mantra. We're constantly looking. We do our big stuff, we do our sexy stuff, we do our integrations, we do our AI, our new features. But one thing we constantly come back to is, right, when an agent does this, like you said, it takes them 4 clicks to get from here to here. Why? Can it be 3? Can it be 2? Could it be 1?
Yeah.
But, simplicity, streamlining, workflow. Yeah. One
of Glynis's famous phrases was that technology should be the accelerator.
Yes.
Because coming back to what I said at the beginning, actually, the PRS, what we do is all about people and people living in a home. So, and that technology in the background should just be making it easier, should just be making it faster. So that we as agents or suppliers have more time to talk and be proactive or deal with things that are outside of the norm, and let the tech get on with those other bits. I mean, I remember when I was a negotiator, the paperwork, the file you used to have on one tenancy, like this.
God. I mean, when we started based with no CRM. We were literally doing like every tenancy agreement, notice, prescribed info when they came in, because I think we were just adopting software by then, because we started in 2004. Our monthly invoices and account statements, everything manually created on Word.
Well, when I was starting to get to know people at HomeLet, we'd talk about different things like I've said it a couple of times today, back in the day. But when I used to, as a neg, you used to fax the application forms off to HomeLet actually, and I was talking to them about it a while back, and they had a person that had to man the fax, or faxes even, because there was thousands of pages.
But I remember half those faxes that came in, you'd be like,
can't even read it.
At the best of times, it was like, dude, I don't know if I could read this if I saw the original, but having you faxed it from like Dubai to me, and I've now faxed it to HomeLet, like, it's like Braille. And then you get a report back being like, they've passed. You'd be like, cool, someone read it. Someone figured out what it said on there. Someone can read that handwriting. Oh, the days of faxes.
Oh, no. And the works orders. I always remember those. When you used to fax a works order to the plumber and wait 3 days for them to get round. Wow. Now you use something else.
So, before we wrap this up, because we will wrap this up now, we're pretty much on the tail end. So what was kind of the biggest nice surprise you had moving from lettings into kind of the supplier space?
The the biggest surprise was that I could still learn something new. Although I didn't move far, did I? Come on, let's But being able to learn something new within the industry, I thought would be more difficult.
And it's a different perspective, right? Rather than, it's still obviously a business with its own interests, but you're looking much broader as a sector, particularly when you've got the kind of market share that they do.
Yeah, I think learning about insurance, if you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd be learning about insurance, I'd be laugh at you. But, and I hear myself talking in meetings now and I think, oh, wow, I really do know what I'm talking about. Never thought I'd know X, Y, and Z. So I think that was a big surprise. I think a big surprise was seeing it from the other side, seeing it from what HomeLet and Let Alliance, I was their customer before. So seeing it from their perspective and how they, what their aims and goals are was interesting, because, the way that they treat their customers is like they're like kings and queens, as it should be.
Well, your customer success is your success, right?
Yeah, and so that was a really nice thing to see
that it wasn't an act. Yes. It wasn't just something stuck on the door, but then behind closed doors, it was like, how do we rinse them?
No, yeah, and it was, and one of the things that they said my first couple of months, and they kept saying things like, we've got to remember we're only a tiny part of an agent's day, so we've got to make it impactful.
And look, I think that's fascinating, again, coming from a company that size, but I think a lot of suppliers lose that, and it's difficult as a supplier. But it was interesting, I saw Simon Ledbetter did a post yesterday, it was from his Voice of the Agent thing, and it was this chart of suppliers with basically awareness against market share, and it's a very interesting chart. But Simon, and I usually agree with most of what he has to say, but he made a really interesting statement in there, which was, if people know about you but aren't using you, your product's not right, or you're not conveying it right. And I'm like, that could be true, but what that ignores is exactly that point you've just said. Agents, and particularly I think letting agents, because you facilitate so much of that process, there is so much to think about. There are so many elements within the business, from just your own internal management HR procedures through to marketing, client acquisition, onboarding, compliance, all the different stages of the tenancy, the fact that as an industry, we handle insane amounts of money that aren't ours. We're still a small company. But, when I look at what we make in revenue versus what goes through our bank account, it's bonkers. And I think suppliers, this is definitely something we've had to learn with the depository, is this patience, is that, you can sit in front of a client and they can absolutely love your product, but guess what? They're also, they're looking at 5 other parts of their business, and ultimately there's a myriad of drivers, cost of the product, or what it means to the business, or how critical that issue is within the company, and also what the revenue or growth opportunities are. I think it's a surprise. You've got to be so patient. You've got to just keep doing what you're doing, keep trying to make it better. The service, the product, the delivery, all you can do is keep going back and keep refining those and just keep trying to make them better. And eventually you'll get to a point where that client you've been chasing for a week, a month, a year, a decade goes, do you know what? That's really good.
Yeah.
I can't ignore that anymore.
No, absolutely.
But I think there is this perception with agents, and look, I'm sure there are suppliers out there like this, but I think the perception with agents is that a lot of supplier partners are just there just to sell a product to anybody and, whatever. And I think, much like most good letting agents are out there, not just to rent any home to any tenant for any landlord. They want to do it for the right ones, and they want to do it well. I think there's a really, we're very lucky in our industry. We've got a lot of really good suppliers with their focus in the right place, like you said, and it's refreshing to hear that is still the core belief of someone as big and successful as Barben. Let alone what's happening with the smaller ones. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that was of such interest to me. Before I started, and even now, that how they treat the customer, and to actually bring someone in with my experience, and the fact that they want to listen to that, I think, that says a lot. And
it says a lot that they also followed through with it, because you hear of this quite a lot going, oh, we'll hire that person, they really know their shit. And then you come in and you tell them stuff and they're like, this is not the kind of stuff we want to hear, you can leave now. And it's like, we've all seen those those interactions, shall we say. Well, look, Hunt, I think we're in danger of waffling on too much. So we've done over an hour. True to form. Thank you so much for coming down today.
Thank you.
Had an absolute whale of a time.
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant.
If you want to know more about Barben Insurance, reach out to Carrie directly or hop on their website. And obviously, as Carrie said, the two main brands are HomeLet and Let Alliance. So by all means, look into that. Do have a little think about how you communicate what's happening in the industry with your client base and how that's perceived. Do you remember internal dialogue and external dialogue are two very different things. But Carrie, thanks for coming down today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Good seeing you. And that's the episode for this time. Got another one coming soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.